Well, it's the middle of July. It's supposed to be 90 degrees tomorrow. So of course I'm thinking Christmas time, right? Aren't you? No, actually I'm thinking winter warmer. Now's the time to brew your winter warmer so they have a time to age and reach perfection by the time the holidays and the colder weather sets in, 6 months from now or so. So I'm making a Russian Imperial Stout, nice big robust beer with a high alcohol content, 10+ ABV. This is another recipe from Ron Pattinson. Ron runs the blog Shut Up About Barclay Perkins. He's a beer historian, written dozens of books, and can debunk just about any myth you've ever heard about beer, especially the history of beer. This is, after the motorcycle goes by, an 1848 Barclay Perkins IBSt, Imperial Brown Stout. They didn't use names back then. They didn't call this Russian Imperial Stout. They used their letter designations at the brew house, and this was IBSt, made by the giant in London, Barclay Perkins. This actually came from Ron's book, though, called The Homebrewers Guide to Vintage Beer. It's on page 58 if you've got it. This is the original Russian Imperial Stout, contracted and made especially for Catherine the Great. Ron describes this as a stout that is full of alcohol and hops. It does have a crap ton of hops, we'll see in just a moment. Says not to survive the journey, but because the Russian court liked it that way. And wacky Russians like their strong hoppy beer, I guess. Yeah, so that's it. Like I said, it's brew day. Well, leave it to me to decide on brew day to re-engineer my shelf for my pumps. When I bought this stainless table, it's got little rails here for a shelf or a drawer, but it didn't have the drawer. So I made a little shelf unit, and they were sitting upright on the bottom of the shelf, but it took up a lot of space, so I decided to remove the whole drawer contraption and just mount these on the slide itself. It's just a piece of what, 1/8 inch, 1/4 inch Luan? I don't know. It fit, so I bought it. Alright, the strike water is at temp in the hot liquor tank. I'm going to underlet again, so I'm going to put my grain in the mash tun first, then I'll run the water through the bottom and fill it from the bottom up. This is without a doubt the biggest grain bill I've done on this system so far. The previous big grain bill was the Dirty Bastard Clone, which was 19.5 pounds, somewhere around there. This is 24.5 pounds of grain. I think it'll work. Cross your fingers for me. Alright, here's a question for you. For the first time I'm using water treatment agents, and it has a mash edition and a sparge edition. And since a lot of my water in the hot liquor tank is also going to be used in the sparge, I didn't want to put the mash watering chemicals or agents in here to start with, because it would just get diluted. In my thinking anyway, am I wrong? So here's what I did. If I was mashing where I put grains on top of water, I would have treated the water first, then added my grains. But since I'm underletting, what I did is I sprinkled some of my measured amount of gypsum and calcium chloride into the bottom of the mash tun, put a little water in there, stirred it up a little bit. Then I put my grains in, and now I'm underletting. Is that the right way to do it for underletting? Tell me. Put it in the comments. Open the valves. Turn on the pump. Alright, I gave my mash a good stir. I've got the recirculation going, got a nice even flow, so I'm not compacting the grain at the bottom. I'm not sucking any grains in. It's a nice clear recirculation. So I'm going to let this rise up to 156 degrees and mash for an hour. All right, I hit my mash temperature, 156 degrees. The pump ran just a moment ago, recirculating everything through the Herms coil, and it overshot it by a couple of degrees, which I'm not worried about because the original mash schedule in the book said to mash at 160 degrees, so I'm within that range. All right, getting ready to set up for the sparge now. I've been mashing for over an hour. I went a little bit long, tried to get a little bit more efficiency. But I think we're golden. Whoop, coming out too fast. Slow that down. Slow this down. Why is there nothing coming out of my hot liquor tank? Well, that's working. So while the camera was pointed directly at the boil kettle and things were happening over here, you couldn't see it. This is what was going on. When I first turned on the pumps, there was nothing coming from the hot liquor tank into the mash tun. And that's because I had this auto sparge adjusted so that the valve was off. It works like a toilet bowl float. When the float gets up to a certain level and you can adjust it, it turns the valve off, which prevents any sparge water from coming in. That's to adjust the sparge level in your mash tun so that you don't get too much, you don't get too little. So that was the problem. I freaked out for a minute wondering, trying to figure out why I was getting no flow from here to here, and then I realized it was the auto sparge. Alright, just took a pre-boil gravity reading, and I'm pretty low. I'm supposed to be at 1080, I'm at 1050 right now. So the homebrew supply store closes in about an hour and a half. So I'm gonna run to the store, let this sit for a while, and I'll start boiling once I get back. Just back from the homebrew store with 3 pounds of dry malt extract. Turn the heating element on, and I'll add that a little bit later as necessary. So, crisis averted. I used some firm cap for the first time. It's supposed to help reduce the foam over, the boil over. Alright, it's kind of a medium boil, not a full rolling boil, but I'm getting impatient. And there seems to be a little or no foam over like in the past, so the firm cap is working. It's time for my 7.5 ounce hop addition. I just hope that my hop spider holds it all, because I've got 7 more to go at 60 minutes and another 7 ounces at 30 minutes. "15 minutes left to go. I gotta let this rest for 30 seconds before I take a reading. I have a shade over 20 bricks, and I think that's about 1080, which is where I should have started at the beginning of the boil. So here's the verdict. I took a refractometer reading. After adding 3 pounds of dry malt extract, I'm at 24. The Beersmith calibration tool tells me that that equates to about 1098, and I'm looking to be at 1.116. So I'm shy still. I have no more dry malt extract to add. But I am about 3/4 of a gallon higher in volume than I should be at the end of the boil. My post-boil is supposed to be about 7, and that's almost 7 3/4, a little over 7.5. So I'm just going to keep boiling until I get down to my 7-gallon mark. Take another reading, and wherever it is at that point, that's where I'm going to stay. If I can get to 1.100, 1100, I'll be happy. Well, what's the post-mortem on today's brew day? The 1848 Barclay Perkins IBSt, Imperial Brown Stout, which would later become known and is still known today as Russian Imperial Stout. Big news is I missed my gravities big time, and I think I know why. In filling out my brew session data, I noticed that the mash efficiency was 62.5%, which is what I used to get when I did brew in a bag, but I've been getting much better mash efficiency using this Herm system. It's up around 82% on average, and I knew better. I should have known that when you're brewing a high gravity big beer like this, your efficiency usually takes a little nosedive, and you're supposed to adjust accordingly. I didn't. So I got an 1100 OG beer instead of 1116. The good news in today's brew day, other than the fact that there will be Russian Imperial Stout, it just won't be 10% ABV, is that when I did a final gravity hydrometer test on the cream ale that's in the fermenter now, it came out at 1.006. Much lower than I anticipated. I wasn't impressed with the yeast activity, the fermentation activity. I used the shaken, not stirred, starter method for this beer, and I didn't think it worked very well. I wasn't seeing much activity, but it's fermented down pretty well. So I might give that a try again. I didn't do that with the Russian Imperial Stout. I did a traditional stir plate yeast starter, but this is like a sleeper. It's fooling me because there wasn't a lot of activity in the airlock and the blow-off. Now, I haven't tasted this sample yet. It sure smells good. Wow. I'm not a real big fan of the cream ales. This is my wife's beer. She likes the lighter beers. Then this is a nice light color. It's got It's got that lemony character on the back of the tongue from the lemon drop hops. It's probably got a wee bit more bitterness than I planned for. I usually shoot for 20 or under. I went a little over 20 if I remember correctly. 23 I believe was the IBUs. But it's not overly bitter. It's a very light malt character. I think she's going to like this. I think she's going to be happy. I think I would drink this. This is back to my original formulation of cream ale. I had been tweaking things and not really happy with it. And I went back to the original, and I think I'm going to lock in this recipe right here. So, brew day success from last Sunday. Brew day, from today. Alright, so that was a huge dumbass mistake.